My name is Jebra. I did everything right. I believed I was one of the good ones. I was not. This is Unwoke, a memoir in episodes.
Oh my God!
My story is a cautionary tale. Buckle up. Chapter 9, The Hidden Violence of Domestic Pets. Not long ago, I sat on my non-toxic, ethically sourced organic couch, ugly crying over an article arguing that dog ownership is racist. Dosha, my Goldendoodle, snored on my feet, unaware of her privilege. Between climate doom, inflation, and gloom everywhere I looked, I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to consider how I was failing at being a moral human. Yet there it was in black and white, things that were racist in our present day, including but not limited to male pattern baldness, astrophysics, breakfast, forks, daylight saving time, spirit animal, and the notion of healthcare. By the end, I mentally threw out half of my wardrobe and vowed to look deeper into racial disparities in bowel preparation. Yes, even colonoscopy prep held racist undertones. Then the article pounced on dogs. Historically, dogs had been weaponized against black people as slave owners sent their dogs after runaway slaves. In the last part of the article, the writer declared, "Dog ownership reflects systemic racism and classism." According to the article, breeds like Dosha's Goldendoodle signaled wealth and privilege. During Jim Crow, African Americans faced bans and violence for owning dogs, while white Americans flexed power with pets. I assumed dogs brought joy to everyone. Who doesn't like dogs? But that attitude is problematic. The call for inclusive, fair spaces for every dog lover left me dizzy. I knew black dog owners like my neighbors Joe and Stephanie with their pedigreed poodle, but the article insisted I knew nothing. My efforts to fight climate change with cricket crunchies, organic linen sheets, and reduced meat consumption felt futile. Now, pet ownership was problematic too. I stared at Dosha, her tail thumping, and I spiraled. Had I adopted her from a Thousand Oaks breeder to flaunt privilege on a subconscious level? Her organic kibble and artisanal leash had cost a fortune. Was I complicit? I imagined rehoming her to an anti-racist rescue in Baldwin Hills/Crenshaw, but her puppy eyes gutted me, and I couldn't imagine life without her. My kids adored Dosha. Charcuterie called Dosha her spirit animal, a phrase I corrected to companion soul after the article's warning. Am I racist for having a dog? I asked the kids one night after dinner. Literally shook her head, and Ginsburg, pausing a Tucker Carlson video, rolled his eyes. "She's just a dog, Mom. Relax." "Just a dog. The article says dogs are a white supremacist flex," I said. "Should I give Dosha up?" "I love Dosha," Charcuterie whined. I hesitated, the article's weight crushing me. "Sweetie, pet ownership might be problematic," I said, my voice trembling. But was it really a problem when almost everyone in our neighborhood owned a dog? We got Dosha to teach the kids responsibility, but I was the one who did all the work. Was that also problematic? I pictured Dosha in an animal sanctuary, all confused and alone. Tears welled in my eyes. Barely paying any attention to my pain, Ginsburg snorted. "Don't be crazy, and stop reading stupid shit. Having pets is racist? Obama had dogs." "He's black," I reminded everyone. "Black!" "Half black," Ginsburg said with a sniff. "What a retarded article. Sounds like garbage." Literally intoned. "We don't say the R word," I sighed. Being a parent was a daily challenge. I tried to tell my daughter that the author of the article, a former BuzzFeed writer, did not pen garbage. This was a thought-provoking piece, just like the one they had written about masking forever and keeping the thermostat at a climate-friendly 85 degrees. My daughter just moaned and mumbled in response. I called Arson and Echo, hoping for more support or at least a better point of view than Ginsburg. Arson sighed. "It's layered. Dogs are joyful, but white privilege taints everything. Maybe switch to a rescue feline? Cats are less problematic." Echo added, "Check your internet browsing. That's racist too. Try looking into Dosha's breed and educate yourself. But clear your history because you're probably being watched." Googling Dosha's breed showed me that Goldendoodles were considered designer dogs. I frowned but kept reading. The The great-granddaughter of author Charles Dickens, Monica Dickens, bred Goldendoodles for people with dog allergies. Somehow, this made me feel better knowing Dosha was created to help the less fortunate. For all intents and purposes, she was a service dog. The article's call for inclusive dog spaces baffled me. Did it mean dog parks for all races? I took Dosha to a park, scanning for microaggressions. Within 5 seconds, I was offended. A man in a red hat walked his pit bull and my stomach churned. Was that a racist dog whistle? No pun intended. That night I was in bed, scrolling through social media when a link popped up about the outdoors. Hoping it was about climate change, I clicked it, and what I read chilled me to the bone. I ended up sucked into a think piece about how the outdoors and parks, specifically, are historically exclusionary. At the end, the author of the piece begged readers to change the narrative, diversify leadership, make outdoor spaces actively inclusive, tell different stories. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache brewing. I tried so hard to be good, fair, morally pristine, yet I failed. I was a pet owner and a park goer. Sobbing into a tissue, I tried a guided YouTube meditation from my favorite Arcturian two-spirit, but visions of Trump's red hats flooding Los Angeles, plus non-inclusive dog parks persisted. Inflation at $7.99 a gallon for gas forced us to fire our gardener. Could I afford Dosha's organic dog food long-term? Just another thing for me to worry about. My stomach clenched, my brain churned, my heart pounded as my insecurities gnawed at my insides. Later in the week, Dosha and I headed to Laurel Canyon Urban Preserve, where a sandwich board read, "Welcome to Land Acknowledgment Ridge, formerly John Muir Loop, under review." A pop-up greeted us, outdoor allyship activation. A woman in a puffer vest with a ranger hat and nose ring handed me a clipboard. "Are you here for the hike towards equality?" she asked. "We open with a guided consideration for hikers, then we audit the trail for problematic features." "What counts as problematic?" I asked. "Rattlesnakes?" "Stairs," she said solemnly. "Plus narrow trails, uneven surfaces. Historically, the blind and deaf haven't been able to enjoy nature, not to mention park rangers often have an ableist and unaccommodating attitude." "They do?" She nodded and closed her eyes. "I was taking a group rafting last year, and there was not a safe place for a woman to keep her mask from getting wet." "Wow. Next weekend we are talking about inclusivity in birding and systemic challenges. That's what this group is all about." Dosha wagged her tail. We gathered in a circle near the kiosk. A volunteer read a land acknowledgement, then we breathed into our pelvises and apologized to a sycamore tree. I tried to look repentant without clenching my glutes. Our guide Juniper, they, them, ranger of repair, led the way. The sun shone through the trees, creating a pattern on the ground. I took a deep breath and closed my eyes to soak in the moment, then snapped my eyes open for fear I wasn't being inclusive and considerate. "Any questions?" Juniper asked. I raised a tentative hand. "How do we, practically, include more people in the outdoors?" Juniper brightened. "We practice the art of inclusion through language, both verbal and nonverbal, imagery, leadership, and amenities, representation in brochures, hiring rangers from the community. Clear policies for safety don't default to calling the police." I nodded as if I knew what she meant. Halfway up the trail, we stopped at a bulletin board. Black Birders Week, meet up here with photos of smiling families in field vests. At the overlook, Echo appeared in knit culottes, breathless. "You made it! Nature equity is everything." She gestured at the valley. "Isn't this radical?" "It's a lot," I said, looking at a couple who sipped from their Stanley cups through a special hole cut into their COVID masks. A woman near us launched into her own allyship aside. "I no longer hike alone," she said, "because outdoor spaces code scarcity and whiteness. I curate group hikes to center safety. If you're interested, let me know." Another man chimed in. "I only buy gear from brands that moderate racist comments on Instagram." Someone else praised an outdoor company's campaign. They replaced images of white couples in down jackets with black women in head wraps on switchbacks. On the walk to the car, Dosha tugged toward the meadow. A black dad threw a frisbee to his daughter. A Latina mom corralled a toddler with a sandwich. An elderly Korean couple shared thermos tea and cut fruit with a pocket knife, watching hawks circle above. It looked inclusive to me, but what did I know? Back home, I tried to reconcile all of it. Is dog ownership inherently oppressive? Are parks inherently exclusionary? Is everything I love a system I must audit? Echo texted a link to a coalition organizing a Trail Names Reckoning. From his room, Ginsburg texted a photo of Dosha sleeping on his Trump 2024 tee like a queen on a silk pillow. I briefly considered rehoming Ginsburg, but I felt nothing from Echo's text. Before I put my phone down for the night, I scrolled through the pictures I took on my hike. Everything I saw seemed inclusive to me, but what did I know? Maybe that was my privilege talking, or maybe it was common sense. Nah, it was my white privilege. Sigh. I scrolled through my favorite social media sites, then landed on an online magazine I loved for its liberal angle. Father Pacific was a radical yet brutally honest and wise place for articles. I settled in to listen. From the title, I knew it would be good. Unmasking lawn care, intersectional harms, and ties to right-wing settler fascism.
It was in the mid-20th century that lawns metastasized into symbols of class ascension and flight from the undesirable urban cores teeming with racialized poverty. Yup, rigid lawn conformity enforced fascist undertones of surveillance and exclusion. Grass seed became a toolkit of structural racism. It's true. The fascist colonizers erased sovereign indigenous nations, bulldozed the raw earth and carpeted it in the white man's sordid fescue and Bermuda grass. Consider indigenizing your yard. Why not? This is a radical act of decolonial solidarity. True liberation is unfettered creative agency, designing a riot of blooms and edibles that ignite communal joy, transforming gardening from drudgery into a praxis of mutual aid and bioregional kinship. For several seasons, I've been immersed in this intersectional yard reclamation. Last cycle, heirloom gifts birthed a delightful polyculture of maize, legumes, and cucurbits, though colonial pests like gophers ravaged the cucurbits. We have refused outdoor irrigation, a hallmark of affluent excess. No thanks to the white man's irrigation system. Nope. Left untouched, unscathed, and decolonized, the native dirt and rock population punctuate my yard. It's a giant middle finger to the HOA and the colonizers who unilaterally decided a green lawn was a mandatory decree for suburban occupation. No one is telling me what to do. Green lawns? For colonizers only. Listen to me. If liberation begins anywhere, let it begin in the soil beneath our bare, compost-stained feet.
Chapter 10. Inclusivity and Braid Prohibition. Recently, Joe, Stephanie, and I stood in the front yard, sorting out a mix-up with an Amazon package addressed to a stranger. Naturally, the conversation veered to oppression and race, as it often did. Our neighbor Hannah stepped outside to investigate. I casually remarked she might be a white supremacist, unaware of her complicity. She looked uneasy, so I clarified with a friendly smile. Asians are often complicit in systemic racism, and much of their success has come on the backs of Black communities. Enlightened circles now acknowledge this. I added thoughtfully. Also, while most Asians excel at math, numbers are a patriarchal construct invented by a white man. She gave me a sharp look and slammed her door. I briefly wondered if she might be autistic, as everyone seemed on the spectrum these days. That behavior was uncalled for, but I couldn't allow someone else to dictate my mood. That evening, I enrolled the kids and myself in inclusivity training and submitted a school board request for more books by Black authors. Social justice work never ends. We also needed to explore non-binary and agender authors. Before leaving for training, Charcuterie had asked me to braid her hair. I gave her a ponytail instead and discussed cultural appropriation. Woke parenting was a full-time job, but someone had to do it. She received a playdate invitation, so I investigated as one would do. I needed to know the family's political views. What if she'd heard something horrifying, like only two genders existed? Scouring their social media, I found they were heterosexual, not ideal but tolerable. One might have been secretly trans. I withheld judgment. I prepared a checklist for our meeting, confirming masks, vaccinations, and no gas stove cooking, a climate horror. I also verified they owned an electric car to rule out denialism. Flat Earth questions would come later. My plan was to avoid Trump inquiries unless necessary. Long story short, they failed the screening, unvaccinated, and laughed at my voting history query. I explained pre-Obama elections didn't count, but the mom rolled her eyes. Seeing my checklist, she muttered, "You've got to be kidding." "I assure you I am not," I said, trembling in my Black Women Do It Better tea and pride cap, holding my ground as she continued laughing at me. "Sadly," I told Charcuterie as we'd returned to the car, "that family is a bad influence. We must guard our circle." Charcuterie, identifying as a parakeet, chirped agreement. I validated Tweet's identity and asked, "Would you like to invite them to Tweet's house instead?" In the school parking lot, I spotted an overweight, non-binary-looking child with a parent in mustard overalls, blunt microbangs, oversized glasses, and box-toed vegan shoes. My kind of people. I guessed they drove a Subaru. They did drive one, complete with a coexist sticker and a Dr. Fauci bobblehead. Marching over, I introduced myself. The person in the mustard overalls was named Cinder, and within seconds we were discussing the flaws of first-wave feminism. No checklist needed, they immediately passed the vibe test. Passing a Trump sign on our drive home, I braced for nausea, but oddly, I felt only a faint twinge, quickly dismissed. Later, Charcuterie stunned me. Tweet hadn't wanted to play with Cinder's fat child Brooklyn, an alleged school bully. I sensed size-based judgment, forbidden in our home. It disappointed me, but I reminded myself that the road to social justice was long. One checklist item at a time. Chapter 11, The Collapse of My Nervous System. I was never much of a nail-biter, but when I read about Elon Musk buying Twitter, I chewed all 10 fingernails down to tragic little nubs. I wore gloves for weeks. On October 27, 2022, the world nearly imploded. Unrestricted speech was back. Elon Musk took the reins from Jack Dorsey for $44 billion, promising free expression and algorithmic transparency. I preferred the old system, where dangerous voices like the Babylon Bee were banished and anyone straying from the approved narrative was marched directly to the digital woodshed. Elon pretended he wanted fairness, but we all knew what was coming. A speech Nazi banning sacred words like trans, gay, and bisexual, while boosting tweets about Teslas, robots, anime girls with giant knockers, and rockets he wanted to bear back into space. The Babylon Bee had been rightfully suspended for refusing to delete an anti-trans tweet about Rachel Levine. Then Elon restored them alongside a parade of problematic accounts. I stormed into the kitchen, clutching my phone. "Listen to this! Elon Musk is buying Twitter!" I announced, my voice shrill even to my own ears. Brad looked up from his laptop, sighing. "Someone just gave me a 1-star Uber rating. I drove them to LAX in rush hour." "What? Why?" I bit my tongue, wanting to ask if it was because of his newly grown-out beard. He threw his hands up. "They couldn't hear me through my 2 masks, and apparently my latex gloves were creepy." I gasped. Those anti-science lunatics. He dumped the dregs of his tea in the sink, shoulders sagging. The single star wounded him deeply. I opened my laptop to file a furious letter to Uber, demanding they ban anyone with low empathy for COVID-conscious drivers. But then things took a drastic turn. Rumors spread that Elon was creating his own smartphone, the Tesla Phone X. If Apple dared remove the Twitter app, he'd unleash it upon humanity. Ginsburg asked for one, and I sent him to his room. We don't speak of Tesla in this house. Not anymore. According to the article I read, the Phone X would come preloaded with apps you couldn't delete without detonating the device. Tesla, the boring company, more Tesla information, NASA, Netflix, a live feed of Earth's core, Elon's personal email, even more Tesla information, SpaceX, Space Force, Cybertruck ordering portal, Dogecoin. You could even text Mars. Through crystal-powered tech, you could upload your brainwaves and let a robot version of yourself do your chores while your real consciousness took a nap. This wasn't the future liberals wanted. This was the future Elon wanted. Then Elton John quit Twitter, leading millions to ask, was he even on Twitter? He issued a statement about misinformation dividing the world. I assumed he was referring to the newly released Twitter files, which showed that voices had been hidden while others were boosted. So that's why I was suddenly seeing a mulleted man named Theo Vaughn on my For You page. While processing Elton John's departure, I saw another horror. Elon was cutting free lunch for Twitter employees. A non-binary user named Basil wrote, "People will probably die." And honestly, they weren't wrong. Then came the vomiting. Employees were reportedly throwing up because Elon walked into the building. Imagine chatting with the selfie coach about ring lights and suddenly dry heaving into a compostable bin. And then the layoffs. Elon gutted essential staff. Climate change negotiator, kombucha brewer, multigender analyst, queer theorist, lesbian Arabic culture historian, diversity psychologist, trans leadership ambassador, erasing whiteness educator, selfie coach. How could Twitter survive without its gender studies professionals? It couldn't. I texted Arson and Echo that Twitter was doomed, MySpace 2.0. But Elon wasn't done. He democratized verification. Anyone could buy a checkmark for $8. The golden crown once reserved for righteous elites like Mark Ruffalo and Sean Penn was now available to stay-at-home moms who voted Republican. Hillary Clinton was now equal to that PTA mom I couldn't stand. Speaking of the PTA, I'd just come from a meeting where I nearly came to blows with a mother named Ellen, which triggered me because her name sounded too close to Elon. They were planning career day, and a Homeland Security cybercrime specialist was coming. "A hacker," I corrected. "Not a hacker," Ellen replied, dead-eyed. "A federal agent." "Exactly. Under Trump, they deported brown people," I said. "And you want him talking to your kids?" Someone reminded me that last year I'd suggested a visit from a transgender makeup artist with a police record. "Everyone deserves a second chance," I hissed. When Ellen shut me down, I stormed out, too angry to even listen to my murder podcast. At home, Ginsburg was watching old episodes of All in the Family and laughing. "This guy reminds me of Grandpa," he said. "Absolutely not," I said. "That show is racist trash." He listed the shows he'd been watching. The Brady Bunch, Different Strokes, The Partridge Family, each more problematic than the last. I could feel my blood pressure rising. Before I could intervene, Timothy clomped down the stairs in my gold platform heels and a red wig. "I'm here to slay," he announced. "Jebra, take me to Hot Lips. Tickets are $45 and I need watermelon drops for my skin, queen." I rubbed my temples. It was all too much. Then Charcuterie burst in, sobbing because Brad told her she wasn't a parakeet. "I am a bird." "Yes, sweetheart, you are a bird," I said, smoothing her wings. Meanwhile, Ginsburg turned the TV volume to max, and Archie Bunker screamed through the house. I needed to decompress. TikTok soothed me with liberal rants for an hour. Then I hesitated before logging into Elon's world, that is, Twitter. Or X, as he forced us to call it. Within minutes, I was arguing about free speech, warning everyone it was a slippery slope. I even proposed a governing ministry of truth to weed out dangerous opinions. Libs of TikTok blocked me, but thankfully a drag queen named Antidepressant came to my defense. Free speech wasn't a constitutional right anymore. It was a public health hazard. No vaccine on the schedule to protect us. I glanced at my nightstand where my latest impulse purchase, How to Protect Your Kids from Learning About the Past, sat atop a leaning tower of anti-racist literature. The stack swayed with every footstep in the hallway, as if waiting to collapse and smother me in my sleep. I reminded myself that the real danger wasn't under my roof. It was out there in the world, random words floating freely online, unregulated, unfiltered, ready to cause harm. Thanks, Elon. Thanks a lot. You've been listening to Unwoke, a memoir of my complete unraveling. New chapters drop every Monday. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Substack, where I am still, unfortunately, processing my breakdown. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. And if you didn't enjoy it, then don't say anything at all. Hope to see you next week.
Attention. Attention. You must all clear this area.